Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of One of Us Knows What They're Talking About, and the other one is you. Today, we're going to tackle a topic that we tackled before, and we will tackle many, many times because it comes up far, far too much. But it has to do with the complete disaster that the DIY, do it yourself forms and all of that create. So the last time that we talked about this, we talked a lot about the signings and how most of them aren't even signed correctly. And that seems so silly. So silly, doesn't it, Sam?
So silly.
So silly. I bring in Sam because she's the one that currently oversees a lot of the signings. And when people try to do this remotely, we make them scan it, send it to us. And probably at least 50% of the time, we have to say, no, do this, do that. And they miss it. And it's kind of shocking. So when it comes to things like the DIY or frankly, these legal services where you fill things out, they generate documents and send it to you to get signed on your own, the vast majority of the time, and when I say majority, I'm not talking about 51%. I'm talking about like 90% of the time. They are not valid because they were not signed correctly. It seems silly. I agree that it's silly, and yet it is the reality that we have faced, that I have seen for decades now, which doesn't make me feel good that I can say decades, other than it's great to have that experience under my belt. But today we're going to talk about, on the rare occasion, they've actually pulled it off. They got it signed correctly, and we deal with some of the really, was this my verbiage or was it Sarah's verbiage? Or maybe no, it's not. I'm going to say wild stuff that it says. Just like completely out there. And I think one of the things that happens a lot is when people are married, and being married is a beautiful thing. It's two people coming together saying, we are going to unite our lives and commit to one another in this thing called life. Isn't that what Prince said? And let's go crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And they start thinking themselves as one. And I think that's a very ceremonial thing. Whatever you did at your wedding, maybe you did. We did sand.
Ooh.
Some people do candles. All of that to show unity. The state of Texas, however, still sees you as two distinct people and sees two distinct estates. So what happens a lot, not majority, way more than majority, is people presume that their spouse gets everything, gets to be this, that, or the other. So when they fill out these forms or do this DIY stuff, they assume that their spouse gets it. So they'll just say, if my spouse doesn't survive, then XYZ. So Cyntia or Sam, not Sarah, Cyntia, Sam, what thoughts and experience has Burch Law seen in this regard?
Mostly upset family members when it comes time to probate.
But we've seen it where, so if someone says, we have one in particular that said, if my wife doesn't survive me, then everything goes here, but the wife survived.
Yeah, I think there was one also with a husband essentially saying that the kids get everything if the spouse does not survive them. So, Lorie, what does happen to their stuff then? How,
It's
if let's say hypothetically, Kimberly would say, if my wife doesn't survive me, everything goes to the kids. We've established in the past that you would co-own your home with your two kids and then the two kids that she had from her previous marriage. How would you get it back? How could you get it back? Could you own the whole pie again?
The most accurate answer is it's going to be however the probate judge decides this is interpreted. And whatever the probate judge determines is needed. And I mean, that's really the most accurate answer. The problem is that in a couple decades of doing this, the number one thing that I've heard from everybody is they want to make things simple, straightforward. They don't want to leave a mess because nobody actually, I hope everybody's sitting down who's listening to this, nobody actually wants to have to get their will, trust, powers of attorney, estate plan done. People don't call us like thrilled to death they're going to do this or thrilled to death. No pun intended.
Wow.
Good one. So it's just the reality, and more people need to face the reality that this is coming for you sooner or later. Who knows? Which is the reason to get this done. And they're not completely thrilled with the idea of having to do this, but it is a reality, right? So the thing about it is that when things are left up to interpretation, right, is when we don't know. So they don't want to leave a mess, but a mess can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And so the problem is even if you've done something DIY or something where you think it's this better than nothing, which a lot of times we talked about this before, it is nothing because it doesn't even get signed correctly. So it's like you didn't do anything. But right now we're talking about if you actually pulled it off and created something that's valid, so we have to go by it with Cynthia's example where we're excluding a spouse, it's leaving a mess. And when I say a judge has to interpret it, really all that needs to mean to people is that it's going to take more time, more delay, or more expense and all of that to sort out. And then it is left in the hands of the people that you're leaving behind to agree, consent, do whatever. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see in the actual drafting of some of these things is people making assumptions that things happen automatically when they're married that don't actually happen automatically. So they kind of bypass something. So a lot of our clients think like, well, why would I need to name my spouse as executor? Why would I need to name my spouse as my medical power of attorney? They're the ones who get to make medical decisions for me. One of the things I dealt with a client not too long ago, but I actually remember it's when we lived in the previous house and I was doing a late night walk because I needed that. And I remember looking at my phone and seeing a text from a client who basically said, I'm really sorry, but that doesn't make any sense. When I was trying to say, you have to, in your will, give things to your spouse first. We've bought this together. This is all ours. It's all joint. But the reality is that is how the law looks at it. And it's not automatic that your spouse is going to be able to make decisions, inherit things, and all of that. And so that is why we see a lot of things happen in the DIY space where people who make those assumptions or have those understandings, or I guess we should say misperceptions, and then they somehow pulled off getting it signed correctly, and now we have to deal with it. So they are, in fact, leaving a mess, which they're saying they don't want to do. And I think one of my favorite ones, we've talked about this before, I think, but one that we had to do, and just it's not like Mad Libs where you just fill in the blanks, people. It's really not. What was the 100 shares one? We won't name names, even though we can because it's a public record.
Yeah, we've mentioned this one before.
But I think I've actually got it pulled up here. Okay, I'll say this because no, we've redacted names. Okay, now for those of you listening, which is probably in the thousands by now, for those of you listening, this may sound reasonable to you, but let me break it down for you in case it sounds correct. I direct my executor to divide the residue of my estate into 100 equal shares, which will be distributed as follows. Enter name will receive 0 shares. And enter second name will receive 0 shares. For those following along at home, oh no, Sara Sam, of the 100 shares, equal shares they put out there, how many have we distributed?
0.
Ooh.
Crazy.
So
Provided, however, if any beneficiary, an alternate beneficiary, if one was appointed, which you don't appoint beneficiaries, I don't even know what that means, shall die before becoming entitled in accordance with the terms of my will. Nobody's entitled to anything at this point, by the way, to receive the whole of his or her share, which is how much, Sarah?
0.
0 of the residue of my estate. Such share, or the amount remaining of that share, will be divided, wait for it, will be divided amongst the remaining beneficiaries in shares proportionate to the above share allocations. Have we given anything to anyone at this point?
Nope.
What? We haven't?
Nope. Nada. Zilch. Etc.
Etc.
And here we have something that I really love called wipeout provision. Wipeout. And here's what we've been talking about. Should my spouse predecease me, did not, or fail to survive me by 30 days, and I should leave no children, they did, child, grandchildren, or no children, child, grandchildren, or grandchild surviving me, or should they all die before becoming entitled to receive the whole of their share, which at this point we've given away nothing, then I direct my executor to divide among remaining residue of my estate into 100 equal shares.
Ooh.
And to pay such shares as follows. 100 shares, finally there's someone who's going to get something, to enter name and children for their own use absolute if they are alive.
Wow.
Whose
And
children?
if I scroll up to the beginning of this will, that person is one of this person's children. So it says, if none of my children survive me, so I've given away nothing, but if my wife doesn't survive me and none of my children survive me, I give 100% to this child of mine. Or 100
That makes
shares.
sense.
Okay.
This person and children, but we just said the only way this wipeout provision comes into play is if none of my children and none of my grandchildren and so forth survive me.
Maybe they know something we don't about, like resurrection or something. What's their secrets?
Tell me your secrets.
Tell me your secrets. And so then another favorite part of this one is when it talks about the executor. So the executor is someone who is in charge of making things happen. So they get into the bank accounts and they have access to the home. They can sell it. They can pay off expenses and distribute things according to the wishes, of which in this case, we have no idea what they are. And so I appoint person's name and children and person's name to be the executors of my will. So you named a person and all their children and another person to be the executor, to be the ones who need to sell a house. I'll show up at a bank. I mean, and the biggest issue we ran into this, and this is not uncommon. I'm just using this one to highlight things we see all the time. The biggest issue of this is normally when we see these type of wills and we're having to review them, we look down to the signing. The biggest issue is this was signed correctly. So, I mean, look, if you have a will and it was signed correctly and it's a valid will, we we need to use it. So I'm using this one in particular as something to really demonstrate a lot of things. And it's where we don't do document preparation, we do planning. And we have a really cool tool on our website, burch-law.com, cyalaw.com, coveryourassetslaw.com, cyalawyers.com. Anyway, you get the idea. All those URLs will lead you. Look for the checklist, because we have a checklist of, first and foremost, you cannot go to these reduced services and DIY stuff. But secondly, how do you find, and we'll do this as another topic. Don't you think it'd be a great topic, Sarah, for a podcast?
I think it'd be great. Yeah.
How do you find a quality law firm to do this for you? And part of that criteria is really looking for the guidance and advice and the experience. Anybody can pull up a form. And I Sarah knows, my favorite thing when you look at the testimonials and reviews of online sites or will kits that, the most brilliant financial planners in the world have put together, is that those testimonials all talk about how easy it was to create. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think it's very hard to fill out blanks, but they don't get signed validly. You don't get the advice. And I would be willing to bet that this person, this will that I'm looking at, found it very easy to fill in those blanks with so-and-so and my children. And all it did was create a mess. So whatever they paid for this, I don't care if it was $50, I don't care if it was $200, I don't care if it was zero. It was not worth the paper it was printed on, because all it did was cause a total mess. So we have other ones. We've talked about signing before, but just to reiterate, some of the things that we've seen is where people will have family members sign, or people who are named in the documents. That can cause a lot of issues. Default is it's not valid. There are some exceptions and everything. But again, what was I saying? The number one thing that we've heard through all the decades is that people are trying to make this easy and straightforward and not leave a mess. And so, like with anything that has great value or an investment or an ROI, what's ROI, Sam?
Return on investment.
There you go.
Almost said interest.
Good. You got all the letters. Thought I was going to go Sarah, but I went Sam. And yes, and what is Sarah, a return on investment? Ooh, that's not nice. That was mean.
Well, see, now I'm confused because Sam already said it.
Well, the literal definition, which is I know your go-to. But what does it mean when I'm saying what would be a good ROI?
Ah, I see. You get more money back than what you put in.
Super close. You get more than what you put in. And the reason why I'm making that distinction is because everybody has a different value, right? For us, we got a great ROI paying $25,000 for a suite at the Taylor Swift concert.
Yeah,
like to us, that is a no-brainer. That experience, getting to share that with each other, the value that we received far exceeded that. Other people would think that's ridiculous. So it's somewhat subjective. But when we're talking about getting an ROI on the time and money you spend to put together a will, a trust, estate plan, is these people are thinking $50 for a will kit, $200 online, what have you, is a value because they're perceiving, I think, a couple of things. I think some people know that it's not the best thing to do, because people who come to us are like, oh, I have an internet will or I have a DIY will. There's a lot of shame involved. And we hear a lot of better than nothing, which hopefully we've helped dispel the fact that it's not better than nothing. I would almost suggest handwriting your wishes on a napkin is better than any of the crap you're going to see online. For real. And also, I think some people, because Cyntia and I have talked about this, where we won't name names, but where someone has a car seat for their kids, but they don't actually like anchor it the way you're supposed to. So it's just the act. It's performative, that you feel like you've checked a box. This is what I'm supposed to do, but you're actually not doing anything. And the sad fact is, if they were in a major accident, that safety seat, that car seat would not perform as it's designed, and there would be no liability because they didn't use it the way it was supposed to be used. Right. So all of this stuff is, it's not a checkbox on your to-do list to just be like, um, this check, will check, adulting, I did good. It's really something that no matter how simple you think your situation or circumstances are, the law is never simple. And there's a reason people go to law school. There's a reason people work really, really hard to pass bar exams and do this. Some of them are complete D-bags and they just like to feel better than other people. But a lot of them is because there's a very special licensing and obligation and standards you're held to when you're creating this stuff for people. So the idea that we could think that we could just do this ourselves is, your unintended, gravely mistaken. Right?
Nice.
And I'm going to go ahead and say something that I know Sara and Cyntia in particular want me to say. Are you really that naive? Are you really, really? And again, one of us knows what they're talking about and the other one is you. I think a lot of people are fooling themselves thinking that they understand this stuff. The funny thing is for a lot of our clients where we draft the documents, send them to them, they're very overwhelmed by a lot of the language. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of complicated, the stuff that the kind of standard things that we know to put in there that you don't know needs to be put in there. One thing we'll probably talk about again, but I want to bring it up before Sam and Sara make this ridiculous, is that we had someone lose their homestead exemption. And on one hand, it's completely reasonable because they don't know not only the language that needed to be put in their living trust, but then the language that needed to be put in the deed that they recorded to put their home into the living trust to make sure that they wouldn't lose their homestead exemption. Like, to me, that's like, why would you know that? And yet there's these charlatans that create these online forms, and even maybe they have really great general financial advice and they're going to do a will and estate plan in a box. And the problem is like, none of them are licensed attorneys. So guess what? They do not have the ethical obligations to make sure that they are giving you the proper guidance and advice. They're not on the hook. You know who's on the hook? People like me. And we take that very seriously and want to make sure that if you're going to do this, you're going to do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have a serious point before we make it silly.
Okay, wait,
Whoa.
stop. Sara, I need to make sure I'm sitting down. I am. Go.
Okay. So I think it's really kind of funny how the 2 years of working here, I've learned just how terrible these online sites are. And I've gotten to the point where nothing grinds my gears more than I'm watching TV and I see an ad for one of them, or I'm scrolling through like Instagram and I see an ad for them. I'll be at the gym and I see an ad for it and it just fuels me. It's just so enraging. And I see like, this professional football player promoting it and it's like, oh my God, dude. It's enraging, and it's just so funny how working here has really made me.
Sara, one,
That's
I
a lot
love
of
you.
passion.
And two, I think
It's
that's the
a
most
lot.
passion we've ever seen out of Sara.
Yeah.
I feel
But
like
it's
we've
just
never been
wild.
out. She
I don't
doesn't
know.
get angry.
I know what you're referring to with the professional football player. And what really makes me mad about that one is that a lot of the excuses, not reasons, excuses people will give us to not get it done or get it done by a qualified law firm is cost.
Mhm.
And this particular professional football player, I know, has a couple grand to throw at this. He may not throw anything else that great, but he could throw a couple thousand grand at this.
Who is
And
it?
yeah, so that took you 2 years to get to. Imagine where you'd be in like 20 years. You'd be
Right.
like jaded and angry, and you'd create a podcast called One of Us Knows What They're Talking About. And the other one is you, Matt Stafford.
I
And
feel
it's
like we
also
should.
just misleading because for
Oh.
I would put money on the fact that that professional football player, one, doesn't actually have any estate plan, or two, definitely didn't do it through the online source that he is now promoting.
Yeah.
I feel like we should also point out that Sara just doesn't get angry often. So that was wild to watch.
That was like, that was new.
Dude,
Yeah.
nothing
that was
nothing fuels
special.
me more at the gym than like seeing those ads, and I'm just like, God.
But okay, so Sara, let's transition to a therapy session here. Why does that like fuel you?
It's just like I think it's just because people are promoting it and not knowing how ridiculous they kind of are. And it's just, if only people knew the truth about them, then they wouldn't be, so
Do you
happy
feel
to
like
go do
they're
it.
taking advantage of people?
Right. They're taking
hoodwinking
advantage
them?
of people.
Hoodwinking.
I like hoodwinking.
It's a great
is-
movie.
Is there a movie called Hoodwinking?
Yeah, it's an animated movie. Hoodwinking.
Oh, for children or for adults?
I think it's kind of like one of those ones where it's technically geared towards children, but it's got jokes in it for like adults and stuff. I
Is
would
this
say,
like all the
medium
people
range.
crying it Inside Out too? Like all the parents that are just
It's gonna
falling in their
be.
seats?
I want to see Inside Out too.
So Lorie, I have a
That can be
question
our
for
next
you.
Burch Law outing. Yeah, Cyntia.
So, in your professional opinion, do you think that she didn't do this, but let's say my mom decided to leave me and my brother as co-executors and decided that we had to act unanimously? Do you think that would leave a mess?
I think one of the issues is that I know for a fact that you and your brother do not live in close proximity.
Yeah, that's why I
So
chose this.
even if you would be completely in agreement on everything, it can cause a practical issue of if you're needing to go to the bank together, or there's emergency medical decisions and you got to get two people to come from two different places to be there. I think also just the natural idea of getting people to agree on things. Now, one thing that we hear a lot, and I sympathize with this, is that they want everybody to be involved in the decision. And so what I usually say is, look, when you're appointing someone to make medical decisions or to be an executor, you're not saying that they can't get input or guidance from other people. You're just saying that the third party, whether it's a bank, a hospital, financial institution, what have you, knows that they only have to listen to that one person. Because I have, give or take, 5 million siblings. And so if I am the one who's appointed at the point person, the last thing I want to do is just be like, no, I'm making this decision. I want to hear what my siblings have to say. And even if they're like, in disagreement, ultimately I'm the final arbiter of that decision. And so from a practicality standpoint, I don't necessarily think it's great to put people together. However, everybody's, and this kind of gets to the point, why you don't fill out a form and why you get advice, is that there are circumstances where we've had people where they get that, they understand it, but maybe there's some tension in the family and they just feel like the best thing for them is to make sure that both people feel like they're being included or on the same page. And so as long as we explain the pros and cons of the different approaches and how it will work, then we can definitely do that. But I would tell you, in my experience, most of the time, once we explain the reality of how that plays out, most people are in agreement with, you know what, you're right. Let's appoint one person at a time. The other thing I always give our clients an out on is, let's say it's parents who have adult kids, is say, blame your attorney, blame me. Say, I said it was made this most sense to name this person and this person as successor, not to work together. I mean, if that makes it better, then do that. If it's a matter of making sure that you're naming the closest in proximity to you first, or naming the oldest child first, if you want to say your attorney said that was the best thing to do, then do that to mitigate any sort of family discrepancies. But ultimately, default setting is it's always easier if there's one chef in the kitchen. Cyntia, did you want to add any texture to that with your own particular family dynamics?
Oh, like my mom probably would have chosen my brother, but he lives in a
What
different
do you mean
country.
probably?
Okay, well, she would have.
Okay.
Yeah, she would have, despite the fact that he is in no way going to want to deal with it. He is in no way easily able to deal with it sometimes.
And you have a legal background.
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to put you in this category, but we do have people from a cultural standpoint where if they have a male child and a female child, they will defer to the male child.
Yeah,
even if they have no capability or qualifications to do things.
Yeah. It's really weird whenever like there's a significant age difference and that happens. It's like this child is way more, has like the ability, the means, the little bit more life, just experience in order to be able to navigate these situations, but you're naming your 18-year-old. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. So again, that's kind of highlighting just a big picture overview of some of the wild stuff that can be put into these documents that you don't even realize that you're putting in without the guidance. So this kind of falls into our whole like DIY fails. And so I'm scared to transition to this, but I think that we're going to give them another shot, because the first time we did DIY fails, Sara and Sam tried to come up with ones that were not DIY fails, other than Cyntia alluding. Was that episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the Jouch episode.
Okay. Right. And you would agree that's not a fail.
Because you kind of love it.
Yeah. We did really love those.
And then Cyntia did make some allusion to Sam cutting her own bangs, which
I cut them this weekend and they look fine. Nobody's commented on them. So I think I did.
So, okay, awkward once again. But Sara and Sam, would you like to discuss some potential actual DIY fails that you've seen? How I just use that one will to illustrate a lot of things that can fail when you try to do DIY legal planning. What are some other ones that you've seen?
Go, Sam, go.
Okay. Me? Okay. Just because I really liked the jouches, I really wanted to mention mouches, which are
wait, what?
Mouches. They're mushroom couches or chairs, I guess. Mirrors.
It's like an armchair.
It's like you have the fabric, and then like on
trees.
Like trees where those mushrooms will grow on the side. People will like crochet those type of mushrooms and put them onto the couch fabric. Mouches.
Why would somebody do that?
I don't know.
There's a picture in the chat.
Maybe they're just obsessed with mushrooms.
I could see a tiny fairy living in it.
Well,
or what about a Smurf?
Yeah.
Too young to remember Smurfs. They lived in mushrooms.
Oh, I love.
No.
Smurfs are great.
I always felt now I'm a Gen Xer, and Smurfs were my jam. Like that was one of my obsessions.
Mhm.
People who know me know that when I love something, I love it all the way. And so
Mhm.
Smurfs was one of the early on things. And they said they were 3 apples high, but the figurines were always like 4 inches high. And it always bothered me because I feel like if they were 3 inches high, they'd be really cute and adorable the way that we imagine. But if they truly were 3 apples high, that'd be a little freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
A little bit more. Yeah.
And completely irrelevant and not important. And Sarah will probably edit this out. But the people with Burch Law know that my 14-year-old daughter is a horseback rider and is very, very obsessed and into it. So they were talking about a large horse and how many hands high it was. And I think somebody else, I can't remember who it was in the conversation, was like, that's how you measure horses. And I'm like, yes. And you measure Smurfs by apples. It seemed like a good place to interject that. But it was a lot of blank
Another
stares.
thing on that same vein, how big is Azrael then? Because he is a good bit bigger than those Smurfs.
Right. So I think this 3 apples high thing is really ridiculous. Why do they say that? Because even compared to Gargamel, they look like, and it was Hallmark that had the little figurines. I still have tons of them. One, because I couldn't let go, and now they might actually be worth something. And I would go in there and get them, and they really were like 3 or 4 inches high. So where did this 3 apples thing come from?
Maybe
A
it's really
liar.
small apples.
Yeah,
Smurf.
maybe they're like
It's really small.
maybe they're Smurf
But they
apples.
don't have small apples. Like if it was like
They're
corn,
Yeah.
where they have like the miniature corn.
yeah.
How did we get here?
I'm just saying
Mushrooms.
Gargamel is tall then. Gargamel is massive.
As he should.
Yeah, mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
Yep.
Okay,
Your
so
mouth.
That I
This-
feel like
so-
I feel like with Jouches, that wasn't really actually a fail because we ended up loving it so much. Where the Mouches
I'm gonna
just
say we loosely.
I feel like you're using the word
laughed.
"we" a little
Laughed.
loosely.
you guys laughed.
Hold
So
on, that
I'm
doesn't mean
taking
we
that
love it,
as you
though.
enjoyed it. So I'm making a collective we.
For people who watch the video of this, I record this in the same room as Sam, so I'm just looking at her right
Okay.
now, like
Okay, me and Sarah really, really liked it.
it was a silly ha-ha time.
Yeah, it was a ha-ha time. Where I feel like Mouches are just kind of ugly, and I feel like they would be uncomfortable to sit in.
True.
What if one of the mouch
yeah.
or one of the mushrooms is like positioned just so on the mouch, where it's like a pillow?
It just doesn't look comfortable. Like from that picture, it just.
I mean, yeah,
That-
that doesn't.
That would be comfortable, but
So speaking of which, in our couch, my 5-year-old Adley, like she shares my seat a lot,
Mhm.
and so she like snuggles up to me, but I need something to like lean my head on, and so a lot of the times I got to deal with what's just laying around me, and so I'll have one of her stuffed animals, and I'll like put it behind my head, and that's what I'll kind of lean
Nice.
against, but I can't let her see it because if she sees that I'm doing that, then suddenly she wants to hold that stuffed animal.
Well, yeah,
It's usually a unicorn.
that's how kids work.
Yeah.
So we can agree upon yet another not DIY fail. What else do we have?
Fine, man.
So, oh man, which one do I go with? Okay,
Not the sidewalks.
Yeah, no, not the sidewalks. I've lived in my apartment for about 2 years, and it took about 1.5 years of living in there for me to not only get 1, a level, but 2, a stud finder. And so
I didn't really think you were into studs.
thank you for that.
Good one.
So believe it or not, I'm Bob the Builder in my apartment. Emily likes to hold the nails. I am the one who puts everything up. So if you look a little closely, everything's slightly crooked. Because, didn't get a level
I
or
thought you were
stud
going to say because
finder.
you're not straight.
Wow.
Not
that
even
would have been
pictures are
so much
straight.
better. But yeah, so don't look too closely in my apartment. But I think that's a DIY fail because why did it take
Yeah.
a year and a half to
If you
get
would ever let
those two
any of us come
things?
over,
Yeah, I was just going to
Yeah.
say, well, we can't
Yeah.
because you don't invite us over.
It's small.
And
Right.
you've had friends stay over on your couch.
I'll sit on the floor.
Yeah, we have said we will bring our own snacks. We will bring our own entertainment. We will just, exist with you.
All right. And you can look at all my unstraight wall decor.
And we
Oh,
can
yeah.
find all the studs.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm
I
very
would love
curious
that.
where you put all the plants, though. That's my big thing.
Yeah.
I have so many plants.
Oh, that's right. There's a whole plant thing, and they all have names.
They do. A lot of them have died. But it's okay. There's
That's
a few
not
that are
okay for
hanging on.
them.
Well,
The one time, Sarah brought a small plant into the office and kept it behind her. And several times I was like, Sarah, you need to water it. And she's like, no, that one just likes to be dramatic. I'm like, because it wants water?
I would secretly water the plant when she office with me. And then
I
I'd
wish
put a
you
little
did that with my
sticky note.
plant because Cyntia let mine die when I went on
It
vacation.
was already dying. Its number was up. It was starting to
So
turn like a gray
So
color.
it was like on hospice care with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, like the last 2.5 to 3 weeks, it was starting to get a little like, ew, I'm just gonna keep watering it, but this ain't gonna end well.
One of the best Burch Law moments that you all have missed, dear listeners, is when I asked Sara and Sam what they thought hospice was. But they know now. Actually, which it may surprise those who follow along that Sara mostly got it right
yeah.
in comparison to Sam.
Whenever
Anyway,
you
what's
ask
another
me questions of definitions, my brain just blanks, and that's why building came out of my mouth.
No, it's like you all don't appreciate this movie Airplane, but we've got to get this woman to a hospital. A hospital, what is it? Well, it's a big building with patients, but that's not important right now.
That was me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so what's another? Let's see if we can get closer. That's getting closer. What would be another DIY fail?
Yeah. So a fun thing me and my sister used to do when we first moved here to the America.
When you say here, do you mean to the United States of America?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Specifically to Houston.
She said the America.
The America. Yeah.
The
one
America.
The America.
Let's just go.
We used to, because it was 2009, 2010. So those
We don't know.
guys you could do for like your jeans and stuff were very in. And so me and my sister would buy like jean shorts and stuff and decorate them. And I was like obsessed with doing with the American flag. And I'm
like a bedazzler?
No, it's like paint that you put or like marker that you
like
put
puffy
on.
paint?
Like puffy paint?
No, it's more like dye, I guess would be the better word.
Like staining it?
Airbrush? Airbrush?
No, it wasn't an
it's like
airbrush.
a
It was
thing you
dye.
put on, like you press it on. And
but we would do the American flag a lot, and I'm 90% sure I have appeared that where the American flag is backwards.
I am 100% sure that you need to produce those.
yeah, do you still have any?
Yes.
I don't think I do. I think I donated them when I moved to Dallas.
We
but
can make some more.
I could. We could recreate it.
Great. So somebody who went to like the Goodwill and got a $2 pair of jeans are walking around with a backwards
jean
American
shorts
flag.
specifically. So
well, that's better than an upside down American flag that one of the Supreme Court justices flew on January 6th.
Sam,
I know you all know what I'm
curious
talking
about this
because you
last
pay
one on
attention.
here.
My one?
All right, let's go there.
There's a question mark on it.
Oh, that's always good.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's if you wanted to do it.
But I think this is our fourth one, and we usually stop at 4. So.
Wait,
Okay, so what is
Sarah?
So this is
I love it
want
when
to go
stories
with
start this way.
I want to go with
Sarah,
the.
I want to hear about the bathtub.
Okay, I'll go with the bathtub instead. So my mom is a big DIYer. She's actually really good. Like she's crafty, she's creative, like she knows how to interior decorate. Like she's really good.
Which
But
interior decorating is what, Sarah?
decorating your interior.
Your interior?
Yes. So
Stop, not mature enough.
So a big, like
Clearly.
when we lived in that house, a big thing was just kind of, it was an older house built in like the 70s or 80s. So they were always revamping it and things like that. And one goal was their master bathroom, and so they completely like gutted it and redid it. But my stepdad, you know, being like a man, was like, let me take care of the bathtub, and kind of manhandled the faucet in a way that you could not get it back on with anything. So
impressive.
they just had a broken bathtub that they could no longer use. And then they ended up selling the house like a few short months later with bathtub completely non-functional, faucet missing. But I mean, it worked anyways. It's kind of funny when you think about the fact that I would say that's their one DIY fail I've seen.
Wait,
So
hold on.
props
You
to
said
them.
it worked anyways. What worked?
The selling of the home
Okay.
worked, not the tub.
I just wanted
Yeah,
to
no.
clarify.
I mean, they probably had to do what's called allowances or something in there for.
Probably.
Yeah.
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 My sister's ex-husband, they were living with my parents for a while in the upstairs, and something happened to the toilet, and so he like replaced it, but he put like most of it on backwards. So I guess that's supposed to be fun.
The toilet on
The
backwards?
toilet on backwards?
Yeah, he not like the actual seat. He put something on backwards to where like he fucked it up, which really
Can
just
you
added to the
find-
dislike to him. So
Can you find out what it was?
yeah, I'll ask my parents. But they
I need to
hated
know
him
what was
because he,
put on
like,
backwards.
I have to see, but he did something.
Like, did it not flush down?
No.
It flushed up?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, just hit you in the face like a bidet.
Wow.
I'm thinking
that
of the
is just,
components here. I really need to know.
I'll ask. He did something to it to where it was like broken or like it worked.
Okay.
It was just
do we have specific examples of cake fails?
no. The only one I could really
Then why did you put it?
No, well, because I was like, well, I didn't know if we needed more. That's why there was a question mark. But we usually stop at 4. So
We stop whenever I've gotten tired of you all.
which is usually at 4. But there was one specific. I sent it to I was about to say Cyntia, to Sarah. Where it's like I don't remember what the show is called. But the one where like they recreate bakes and they usually turn out like horrible.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yeah, like those kind of fails. But that's on purpose. But like where there was one specific where it was Peppa Pig. And it was a whole bunch of cupcakes and they like iced over it, but they did it so badly. Like it doesn't even look like Pippa. She didn't deserve that.
That show
did
is such
she?
a perfect embodiment of DIY fails, for real.
Okay.
And it's what happens when you have non-experts do something that actually takes experience and like knowledge to do something. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Good job. Anything else that we want to offer for today?
Don't do a
Is there
DIY
anything else
will.
we can offer?
We can always offer more. But Elvis didn't do
Encores?
ovations, encores. Elvis didn't do encores because you always got to leave the audience wanting more.
Boom.
And that's where we are. Okay, great. Well, thank you once again for joining us for another enlightening and hopefully entertaining edition, experience of one of us knows what they're talking about and the other one is you. Definitely join us next time as we will explore another legal issue and life issues, brought to you by Sam and Sarah.
Woo!
Until next time.
Woo.